All right, this story's just way too concerning for me to ignore, even though I try and stay away from like internal American politics to, bring Canadians the Canadian news. But we have to talk about the fact that Joe Biden has weaponized the woke fascist military he now somewhat controls the top brass of against a civilian journalist in Tucker Carlson. And even if you want to say Tucker Carlson's not a journalist, he's an opinion guy. Does not matter if Tucker Carlson's a journalist, an op-ed editor, or just some random dude. You cannot use the American military, any military, Canadian military can be the same. I mean, this is kind of what's coming in the Canadian military. You see it come down the road, where the military is attacking Tucker Carlson. Now, how did this start? Tucker Carlson did, so since Joe Biden's in charge, there's a new woke push on everything, right? Joe Biden, the vaunted moderate, who's going to, really bring up the level of discourse and return us to normalcy. Listen, I don't think it's Joe Biden's fault. Once Joe Biden finds out where he is, I'm sure he'll correct that. But right now, he's just wandering around maybe the White House. Someone catch Joe, bring him in the office, tell him what do you think about this. But you have Tucker Carlson basically saying, new uniforms for pregnant women in the military shouldn't be our concern. Now, it's not that the military shouldn't have uniforms for pregnant women. That's fine. I don't think he was taking issue with that. But this shouldn't be the thing that the top military brass is sort of bragging about, right? He made the argument that the function of the military, correctly, is to use force, right? Either an offensive or defensive capabilities in the interest of the American people. That's the point of the military. The military, if you wanted to say, we have this new, missile that can hit China, great. Or we have this new counter-battery system that could stop a missile from China. This is the point of the military. Also, the point is sort of be a bit hush-hush on these things. But when the military starts to parrot its wokeness, right, look, we have the new pregnant uniforms. And then you see the Marines are now doing away with the gender-neutral fitness standards. Remember when it was like, yeah, women can come to the Marines as long as no one lowers standards? Well, it turns out most women didn't meet the standards. Now it's time to lower the standards. But the real concerning thing here is the fact that the military went back after Tucker Carlson. You cannot do that. You can't do that. Like, that is actual fascism. Like, that you cannot do. You cannot use the military to attack your civilian, political opponents. It's so obviously terrible. And I'm going on this because, like, I've had such frustrating conversations with my overly left-wing family who are like, you don't understand, and Trump, blah, 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 and Trump. Imagine if Donald Trump's military went after Rachel Maddow. Imagine if Rachel Maddow or anyone on the far left has continued to push some sort of anti-American nonsense like, America's the real bad guys and that's why we need to give Iran missiles. And then the American military said, shut up, Brian Stelter, blah, blah, blah. They'd be screaming fascism and you can't use the military to attack civilian journalists. And I would actually come to the defense, say, I hate Brian Stelter and he's wrong, but the military cannot get involved in this because that breaks some very, very strong and important fundamental principles that Joe Biden's just thrown out the window. And maybe this is some, internal, like, Daniel has problems with specific things within his life because, I had to hear my friggin' family complain, oh, Donald Trump and the government. You don't understand what it's like living under Donald Trump and a government that can after you. Bitch, please. I'm literally being sued and attacked by the members of the Canadian government and political establishment. They want $2.5 million from me for something that I can clearly prove in court and have actual recordings of. Like, you think you know what it's like to be persecuted by government? I'm actually being sued by one as a journalist, okay? But I don't get up there and, oh, no, Donald Trump and the Republic, and it's me. So, you don't understand what it's like under Trump. You guys don't understand what it's like to try and be a journalist that actually criticizes, like, Justin Trudeau and, I don't know, the fact that the government's funding terrorism? Okay. Daniel's little rant over there. But there's a much more important thing, whereas we all know what the Washington Post and New York Times would be writing right now had the military attacked Rachel Maddow last year. We all know. We all know. We don't need to pretend that there's any type of moral, intellectual, or any type of consistency on the left. There is no principles on the left. There was no principles. It was always orange man bad. And I know you know this, but this is the absolute confirmation. There was never a principle in sight when the woke or even the center left. Because I got this from the center left. There is no principles left on the left. None. Every criticism of Donald Trump had nothing to do with principles except from a very, very, very tiny minority. I'm not going to say no one, but the people who stood on principles on the left, like Glenn Greenwald, who I disagree with on foreign policy, but Glenn Greenwald, I could say, was standing on principles. I might disagree with some of them, but the man stood on principles. He's being attacked by the left. And everyone on the left who stood up and actually attacked Trump on principles has now been, a majority of them have been subject to a wokeization from the mainstream left. So to say the left has no principles, I think is absolutely true, because those on the left who do and stand on them are often ostracized, or the mob is set off on them. And good on them for maintaining their principles. I don't need to red pill everyone. I mean, I'm happy to have some reasonable opposition in a Brett Weinstein or those types. But here you have literal, totalitarianism. Here is the military attacking an American civilian journalist for holding a different political opinion. You can disagree with Tucker. You could say, the best part of the American military, the thing that China fears the absolute most, is the uniforms of pregnant women. The Chinese had an absolute plan to take over America, but the fact that, and it was totally predicated on the fact that they'd always be able to see which women are pregnant and which are not, but these new camouflage has destroyed their entire invasion strategy, and the Chinese military is in chaos. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's the strength of the American military. Who knows? But Joe Biden, I'm not going to say he has, because he probably doesn't know where he is, but the Democratic establishment has weaponized the military now to attack a civilian journalist. That should be chilling. And I think I have something to say, because I know what it's like to try and report on government corruption and have the government come after you and your family. It's not fun. It's not fun. I'm going to wait, hopefully some of my family members, they don't watch the show. But if you do, put it in the group chat, right? And I know you've banned me from talking about politics, but put it in the group chat and see if the next time we have a conversation, if you could say, you know what? If the military attacked Rachel Maddow for criticizing Donald Trump, I would have said it's bad. So I'm going to take the same position when the military attacks Tucker Carlson, because I have, some intellectual and political consistency. Challenge anyone on the left to say those words. Challenge. You say those words and I'll repent all my sins, and I'll impose a carbon tax on the world, and I'll sign on to the Paris agreements, okay? That's the promise right there. Get me off this planet.